Hi everyone, today we got a big jump and gap up here. You can see really sideways consolidation during the session though. And then we kind of fizzled out, tried to go a little higher, couldn't quite get it. Very little volume relative to what we saw on the Friday session, which is typical for the Mondays. We'll see if we pull back, find some support, or if this is just a consolidation before we get that bigger drop. But of course, let's take a look at all of the charts and see what we can find for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got more China tariff news. China accused us of double standards and said the new export controls are a legitimate measure under international law. I don't think anybody was really disputing that. But then you got the mention of 100% tariffs over and above any tariffs already currently being paid. And that was the announcement on the 10th. I don't remember if we talked about that specifically, but there was talk of the trade tensions. But that 100% tariff, I think that's partially the issue, of course, centered around that rare earths materials. Are we going to be able to come to some kind of deal, or is this going to escalate here over the next couple of days, couple of weeks, potentially? China came out and said we don't want it, but we are not afraid of it when it comes to a potential trade war. Of course, Trump came out and tried to kind of downplay it, said that it's going to be okay, and markets did recover on that like we already talked about, but I'm not really sure that it is going to be okay as easily as everyone's kind of saying. I think this is going to weigh a little bit heavier on the economy over the medium term if it does end up that this is kind of the final natural state for this engagement here, which as of right now, I think that's how you have to kind of play it, right? So if things kind of stay the same, I think markets need to go lower to kind of price in that valuation, and for me the tensions still seem very high. Moving over to fear and greed, up to a 33 from a 29, so you had that spike down into almost extreme fear, just a very slight reprieve here. I think we're going to go into extreme fear before this is all said and done, at least in the short term. Momentum still fear, strength still neutral, breadth still extreme fear, and this actually looks like it went lower here today. We'll take a look at that later. Put call ratio continues to elevate, volatility still extreme fear, but it did pull back just a little bit. Safe haven demand spike up obviously with equities rallying just a little bit, and junk bond demand did come down just a little bit. Still in extreme fear though. Moving over to earnings. Earnings do start tomorrow. Forgot to mention it this weekend, but earnings do start tomorrow in earnest, with all of the big banks coming out tomorrow, as well as Domino's Pizza. And then for Wednesday, more big banks. United Airlines also coming out. Delta did very well. If United does well, that should be pretty good for the economy. And then more banks here for the Thursday. And really all week, it's going to be just banks this week. And then we start to get into the heavy hitters next week. Then looking at the economic calendar, basically nothing for today. For tomorrow, Fed Powell speaking at 12:20. I think that time shifted a little bit. And then for Wednesday, basically nothing here that should affect markets until we get to Thursday. PPI Thursday, retail sales also on Thursday. Thought the expectation was CPI on Wednesday as well. Not sure if that came off the board because of the government shutdown, not getting any of that key data right now, but we'll have to keep an eye on that once the government reopens. Moving over to Max Pain. Max Pain still 660, 3.3 million options. Put call ratio still extremely high at a 5.2, so not expecting a ton of fall here, but 630, that should be the floor at the lowest potential point. Not a ton of calls in here. You can see there's not really any calls until in here around 670, so does give you a little bit of room to the upside potentially. You can see these puts in here, 660, 665, still have way more puts than there are calls. So that might prop up markets a little bit more this week than I previously expected. Just keep that in the back of your mind. This is a third week options expiration, and because of all of those puts, that could kind of stabilize markets for the week. And then getting into those charts, S&Ps were up 1.5% off of this critical low. We talked about it Friday and on the weekend video that there was a little bit of a buy up at the end of the session. You can see we did get the pretty sizable gap up to here, and then very little changed on the session. I was kind of hoping we were going to stay below the 21 EMA and just kind of roll here, but there was not enough volume. You can see the volume on the Friday, 159 million versus today at 79 million. So very little shares traded relative to what we saw yesterday. I still think yesterday is going to be the major driver for markets here. We're still below the 21 and VWAP on the daily chart. If those hold as resistance, this is going to be a major turning point, and I still believe that's going to happen, even if this is still part of the broad topping pattern. This is kind of a left shoulder head, right shoulder forming. Potentially we go back to maybe 666 and then we start to fall, or however this ends up playing out. I do believe that this is a topping pattern, and that's kind of the knife that's going to end this, in my opinion. In terms of levels right now, you got this kind of consolidation of EMAs and SMAs in that 666 area, right in line with the 9 EMA on the daily chart and that kind of left shoulder here from mid-September. Could we go to there? If that breaks, then you're looking for the high. If that holds as resistance, then you're looking for a push back towards these lows and that 55 EMA on the daily chart down towards 649. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, of course, we're still in bearish conditions, didn't get anywhere near those most recent highs. So bearish conditions, trailing stop right there at 678. For our chart, of course, still very much bearish conditions. We were super extended here. We talked about it on the Friday, expected that we could see a retracement back into the more normalized trading range inside of those ATR bands, but your trailing stop still here 669.80 on the 4-hour chart, and then the one that I look at most here, your hourly chart, that trailing stop was right in here around 664. We did touch that zone and close above it on the 11 o'clock candle, and then the very next candle was a rejection from here. So technically we did close above the level, but for me, I think this is going to be bearish conditions. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. I still think this is bearish conditions. I think we'll probably push towards that lowest ATR band here, which on the hourly chart is in there around 654.26. That would be the near-term price target. Not quite as low as where we got here around 646. That was obviously a crazy move, but I do think we'll get to here pretty soon. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very similar thesis, right? Big gap up right to that 200 SMA at 602.25. Hit that on the first candle of the day, rejected, hit it again here on the 11 o'clock candle and then rejected, and now we are continuing to sell off a little bit more in the after hours session. I think that's going to be the zone. A little bit more bullish here on the daily chart. You can see we got above VWAP in the 21 EMA, which is not the case for the S&Ps. So the NASDAQ continues to look a little bit more bullish structurally, but that 200, that's what we're looking at, overhead resistance right there. If it pulls back and hits the 21, holds that as support, that's going to be quite bullish. If it cuts through there, then you should be looking for at least this most recent low around 590 or that after hours price action around 582. If it does hold that 21 EMA, then you would be looking for a push back towards the 9 EMA on the daily chart 604. You got a zone in here kind of 604, 605. And then if that zone breaks, then you're looking for that most recent high up around 612 once again. Then moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see that trailing stop in here at 603.83, still bearish conditions, didn't get anywhere near that. Definitely a better level here. You can see 55 EMA was your resistance on the hourly chart, hit that zone, rejected from there multiple times. You can see the volume that came in, good volume, decent buy there. The next candle, similar volume, down candle. So a little bit of mixed trading in here makes sense after the big sell off here. I would say this is likely to roll back down, but short-term price target, lowest ATR band, going to be 592.45. Doesn't give you a ton of room here, but either way, still very much bearish conditions from the hourly chart and up. And then you can see here on the daily chart, of course, ATR band, ATR trailing stop all the way up at 620.87. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell actually looked really, really good, up 2.78%, absolutely massive. Continue to run all session right to that zone of resistance, 244.46, got above all the EMAs and SMAs on the daily chart, looked super, super strong, almost took a bullish position here. And honestly, I should have. It would have been a good trade there. Massive, massive move. Almost got back to unchanged, which is crazy. Only $1.20, $1.30 to get back to unchanged, or 0.5%. Almost retraced that entire move. Interesting to see that. I thought the Russell would be a little bit more affected, but the Russell did well. Talked about on Sunday how small caps are going to be in a better position. Small caps seem to be doing a little better here, something to keep track of over the next couple days. And then you can see Dow up 1.28%, very similar to the S&Ps. Still below the 21, still below VWAP, still below the 9 EMA, momentum bearish, waiting to see what happens in this zone here. Highly traded zone there as well, 462. Came off the trend line. Okay, looks okay there. 55 EMA, I would say, is still your near-term price target. Moving over to the Mag 7, very similar to everything else, still below those short-term EMAs and VWAP, 21 EMA, all in this kind of 368 to 370 area. 55 EMA still looking at that as your price target, 357.24. Momentum still a little bit choppy. RSI still very much bearish. After hours seems to be going a little bit lower here. And really this still looks like a consolidation to a breakdown. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, similar to everything else, got a little bit of a gap up and then sold off during the session. These looked even worse than the S&Ps and the Qs here. Gapped up and sold, didn't maintain any of those gains on the gap up. And now we're starting to sell a little bit more after hours. I just believe that this is going to sell a little bit more. So your near-term price target on Apple is going to be 241.83. We're below the trend line here. We were below it previously, tried to get above it and sold back below it. Again, near-term price target 506.71. Moving over to Tesla and NVDA. Tesla looked really strong. It's back to unchanged from the Friday session, down 5%, up 5.42%. Right at that 9 EMA, gapped up, rallied, momentum back to bullish. RSI still a little bit bearish there, but held in there really strong after touching this level and then rallying out. Out of all the stocks, this is one of the best performers on this session. Definitely out of the Mag 7, structurally looks very good. And then you can see NVIDIA came down into this zone here around the 186 area. That was the zone we were watching, touched it just barely, and then did find a little bit of a rally out there. Again, structurally, does really well. It's back above all the EMAs and SMAs. Of course, it sold with everything else, didn't recoup all of those losses, but definitely some buyers coming in. Of course, we didn't expect that NVIDIA was going to crater into nothing, but a little bit surprising how strong it was after closing below my level here, closing below these lows here. Gapped up, rallied. Out of the stocks to be bullish, these two should probably be pretty high on your list. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples, very little change, came back down to that level 755, hit that level and then bounced just a little bit. Still down about 1/3%, still in the same consolidation range here, but same as everything else, just kind of in the inverse. Got big volume, got a nice rally, came back, retested the zone, probably going to continue to hold this area and rally out in my opinion. And then looking at discretionaries, gapped up like everything else, rallied about 2%, got back above the 55 EMA. Resistance right now, still that 235.85 level. Momentum slightly bearish, but RSI probably going to rally in here just a little bit, hit the SMA, and then continue to sell. Moving over to breadth. Breadth did bounce slightly, but very little here. You can see still at a 34.39, below the 36 level. Momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish. Still believe this is going to go a little bit lower before we see a turn here. Same on 50-day. Did come back to that 40 level, did hold that level. Momentum still slightly bearish. RSI still very much bearish. Wouldn't shock me to see maybe just a little bit more bounce here one time, and then we get a bigger push into those critically low levels, and then we start to see a broader rally out of that zone, or at least a slight reprieve here, something like this, where you get into these really low levels. Again, I don't know if it goes straight down or if we get something a little bit more choppy like this, where you sell off into this zone here, rally out, and then the bigger drop, or something more like this, where we sell into this kind of 20 area, a little bit of a consolidation, then you get that kind of final drop. That's what I was looking for in the Friday video or the Sunday video. And I still think that that's likely to be the case. Still very much believe this is going to go much lower over the medium term. Moving over to the dollar. The dollar did stay positive on the day, up 0.4. Did give you a little bit of a lower high structure here, but still a higher low structure here. So kind of mixed signals. Want to see it hold this zone in here, get another higher low, and then rally out to that 99 area. Right at that 55 EMA, 144 EMA in here at 98.99. We closed above it so far. Obviously the day is not quite closed on the dollar, but so far it looks like we're going to get above it. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. We'll see if we can get the rally out here and then look for that 101.25 to 102 area. Either way, dollar continues to stay bullish, and I think that will continue to be the case. Moving over to JNK and TLT. JNK was up a little bit, came off of that level 96.55, still structurally very much bearish. You can see that momentum, very bearish. Volume, huge selling volume. Maybe the 200 acts is a little bit of support here, but still expecting to see a lower high and a continuation lower ultimately. And then looking at TLT, down just 5 cents, still very much bullish here. It's right on the highs, drifting higher after hours. I think this is probably going to go a little bit more bullish over the next couple days. Moving over to the VIX, gave us an inside candle, got below that 20 level, still holding above the 1850 level, still very much elevated, still momentum bullish, still RSI bullish. Do we spike up here? Do we get a little consolidation? You can see something like this where you get a couple of days in the same zone before we either get a breakdown or a breakout. Certainly a possibility. I still believe this is going to spike up to 28 before this is all said and done, and then we get a little bit more consolidation in this range, something like this where you spike up to this area, consolidation at a slightly higher level before we spike up again. That is what I think is going to happen. I do believe this is a broader topping pattern, and we haven't broken everything quite yet. You do have to be a little bit patient, but ultimately this will go much higher in this kind of rally cycle for the VIX. Moving over to my accounts, I did absolutely nothing on the day. Didn't want to trade it bullish, didn't want to fight the trend in the short term, which was obviously a little bit bullish. Still left on my bearish position here at 620, still in a little bit of a profit there, $47. It was in a much bigger profit, obviously. Going into the close Friday, probably should have taken those. I thought we would get a little bit more follow through, but of course we got some Trump tweets, and that seems to kind of calm the markets, at least for now. Dollar went higher. Somehow this is in a more loser after that. Not sure exactly what that's doing here, but this should get into the money here pretty soon, and then that should be nice over the next couple of months. Still plenty of time there, 2 more months for this to rally 50 more cents, and I think that it absolutely will. So long dollar, still short the Qs. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the China deal. Is there going to be a deal? Is this 100% tariff going to actually go into effect? If it does, what will the effects be on the economy and the stock market? Is the stock market currently downplaying the effects? I believe they are, but let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.